In this episode of the Decentralized Opportunity podcast, we talk with Travis Schwartz of Meridian Business. Travis shares common misconceptions about technology within a business and the value of off the shelf software. We dive deep into the importance of viewing technology as an investment, and he offers advice on how to implement projects successfully. We also discuss the impact of AI on the workforce, as well as essential leadership qualities that you can emulate. So, technology is really complicated, especially for business. What are some of the fault points or common misconceptions that a business owner might have about utilizing technology in their business, and where do they often veer off wrong?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of small, medium-sized businesses start off just bootstrapping it, right? And just doing things manually. And then they just so focused on whatever their competitive advantage is and what's driving their business forward that they lose sight of some tools and technical tools out there that can make their business run smoother and more efficiently. And so they just get in that grind of working nights and weekends to do a lot of manual processes, and maybe don't realize that there's off-the-shelf products. It could be as simple as a QuickBooks or a time entry tool or a field service application or a payment processing application or a way to pay your bills more efficiently. Those things should not be pain points because they're things that all businesses have to do, and there's really inexpensive products out there that help you do it a lot easier, a lot faster.
One thing we've heard consistently over interviews is a lot of business people who start businesses are so this is you kind of hit on it, that they're so in the details with starting the business, building the product, getting their marketing set up, whatever that situation is, that when their business is actually going and they're producing revenue, they start going, oh crap, I don't know how to run the business. And is that the kind of software you're talking about? Payment processing, accounts payable, accounts receivable, that stuff that I don't think a lot of people consider when they're really trying to build the product or service that they want to sell. And then once it's selling, they're like, "Oh crap, how do I track this so the IRS doesn't, come after me or something?" Is that the kind of software you're talking about? Just simple business running software.
Yeah, a lot of the non-sexy stuff, right? That doesn't it doesn't typically involve a lot of innovation, right? So they're innovating on their product, and sometimes there's technical components to that, but a lot of the back office systems that are out there that can help them operate more efficiently. There's a pizza chain that we encountered. And they were beyond startup, but they felt the need to build their own expense reporting tool for employees to record their expenses. Another example is medical staffing, right? So medical staffing's pretty big in the Omaha community, and a lot of them try to build their own time entry tool, right? Because they think that's their competitive advantage. Is these travelers being able to efficiently enter time. That's certainly nice, but to the extent that there's already pretty basic tools out there for getting time entered, where you don't have to build a custom application for that. So in both those instances, they might spend 75, $100,000 building a custom application. Where they're going to have to maintain that. There's going to be changes, over time that they'll have to maintain. That can be expensive. Where if they went and bought kind of a SaaS application that was plug and play based in the cloud, kind of a monthly user fee based off of the number of employees they had to be up and running in a month or two. All the maintenance is outsourced. They don't have to worry about it. They get monthly enhancements or annual enhancements, that type of thing. So yeah, those are some good examples again where a lot of people in the business world, they don't know that. That's not their job, right? To sit around and think about, oh, I wonder if there's a handful of time entry tools that could do this cheaper or better, right? But because they're innovators, or they know their business, whatever their niche is, their competitive advantage, but nobody's competitive advantage is time entry. If it is, you're probably in the wrong business. Or no, nobody's competitive advantage is, you know, uh, their expense reporting tool or purchasing, or even e-commerce, right? Like, let's be honest, right? Like, to the extent that everybody's done about everything in e-commerce, there's a few, definitely a few exceptions to that, but to the extent that, hey, go get up, just get a Shopify site. Let's not build something custom here. Get a Shopify site if that's what your mode is. Get a Shopify site. You're up and running. It's pretty low cost, versus trying to build something custom from the ground up.
You,
So yeah.
you often think of technology as bringing certain competitive advantages, though. How do you go about like sorting out what off the shelf software there is, how you could qualify those, and what is the threshold where it would be advantageous to actually build something custom?
Yeah. No, we kind of think of it as a maturity model, right? Like in business process, and Wyatt, I think you could probably relate to this. Like, not everybody needs to be world class in everything they do in a business, right? To the extent that you've got certain areas where you've got to be better than the competition, but other areas it's okay to be average, and in some areas maybe below average. And so kind of look at the entire business and the process areas within those, and then kind of look at where you want to be, from a maturity model perspective. And if you're doing things, if you don't have a process period, then you got to get one, right? If you have one and maybe it lacks controls, or maybe it's not clear, then you've got to put some structure around it. If you have a process, it's pretty clear, it's got structure, it's working efficiently. The auditors aren't asking you about it. Everyone's comfortable with it. It's not a pain point. Then leave it, right? Don't touch it. But so I think it's kind of looking at the different process areas in a maturity model, and then looking at the maturity model of the organization, right? So to the extent that they're, hey, we're bootstrapping, we're still trying to make it through the week, make payroll. We're trying to get our product out the door. We're trying to get it shipped. We're trying to get, goods in the door. We're trying to pay our bills. We're trying to collect cash. We're trying to look at, get our income statement together so we can get it to the bank. Like, yeah, let's worry about those things first. But once we've got those down, then it's time to circle back and make some investments, back in the business. We typically try to look at an ROI and say, legitimately, like, what would be the ROI of implementing this piece of technology? And if it's less than 3 years, it's probably something you should do. If it's over 3 years, then it's like, okay, maybe your business is going to change, maybe it's going to grow, maybe you don't want to make that investment right now, maybe hold off. Again, nobody knows what's going to happen beyond 3 years. You could get acquired, you could get, a lot of companies are going to buy another business, maybe merge it in. And so, an ROI of 5 years, it's like, well, that's probably not a good investment. Just keep doing what you're doing. So yeah, I think it's that maturity model, and actually putting some pen to paper about ROI.
You hit on something that I think, similarly, especially business owners when they're starting out, don't understand, or sometimes it kind of bites them in the butt on the in a little while, is technical debt. And technical debt being the costs of maintaining your tech stack and your infrastructure. And I really resonated with what you said about get QuickBooks. Don't make your own system. What is the value in that? The value is you're wasting money and time that could be better spent marketing your product or getting it out to new audiences, when the system, and you're spot on, is going to just do it for you. And it's easier to plug and play. You can integrate with everything, and you're spot on the upgrades. I've seen the companies who wanted to set themselves apart by creating their own in-house operations software of some sort. And if it's an upgrade from doing everything in Excel, good for you. But you're spot on. Is there's so much more out there nowadays, and there's a system for every operations need you could possibly have, right?
Yeah. No, I love that term, the technical debt, and it kind of got highlighted. I don't remember when, well, I think it was Southwest, the whole airline debacle, where the scheduling system glitched, and their systems went down, and it caused a backup over, I think it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, last year. and it caused that an outage, and they ended up having about a week's or multiple weeks of delay. And so, to your point, a lot of people do think of technology as a fixed cost, right? And so, if that's true, then they're typically not making investments in the future, and so they're not acknowledging that technical debt component, or that there's an ROI on making those investments. And so you see that a lot with bigger companies probably, but even small companies, because ultimately that cost of not making that investment, it's not going to go away. You're just deferring it. And to the extent that you defer it when you're a $10 million company versus a $1 million company, it's going to cost a lot more, and it's going to be a lot more painful to go through that change the bigger you are. So we see that a lot with companies who say, yeah, we're just going to wait on this. We're going to wait 2 or 3 years. Well, at that point, your data is more junked up. Maybe you did an acquisition. Maybe you have more people now that are used to the old way. And so again, that technical debt is a real thing that we try to highlight with companies, no matter what your size is.
Can you go in a bit deeper about technology being an investment? Because I come from IT too, and it is so often seen as an expense. And rarely is it one of those components where, oh, if I put in here, I'm going to get some return on it. So, how do you go about when you're working with business owners and people of all different scales and sizes of organizations to evaluate what the ROI is going to be for that, how it's actually an investment, and how it's not just costing them money that they're writing a check and it's all just going to go away?
I'm a former accountant, so I like to get into the numbers, and it needs to be truly a quantitative analysis, right? There are some things that are obviously more soft dollars, but to the extent that we can kind of walk through each process that will be changing and the improvements in that, and actually put an hour improvement per week to that process, and then a cost to that. So if it's, we're going to improve 10 hours per week, it's $50. That's $500 per week that we're going to improve. And that's real money. Again, people might think, okay, we're not going to fire those people, right? We're just going to repurpose them. But ultimately, there's an analysis there where you're saving time within the company, and there's a value associated with that time. And so, with a particular investment, to extent it spans multiple areas. It might be, again, the day-to-day tasks that a person's doing become more efficient. It might be month-end reporting, where a report we can get, to better data, more meaningful data. The management can make decisions. Um, Obviously, you're sunsetting systems, so you're going to save dollars there. Now, maybe those are offset by the new investment. And then also you have future costs, right? That a lot of people don't think about. So even your existing system, there's future costs associated with that, whether you're going to, enhance it, or even QuickBooks. QuickBooks is going to raise their prices, over the next 3 years. So we have to make an assumption that QuickBooks isn't going to just stay at, $99 a month or whatever it is. It's going to increase. So there's costs there. Again, you try to put a number to everything. The process improvement can be a little bit subjective, but when you go through and list everything out, and then add in the additional costs associated with the new software, then you can extrapolate that over a buyback period or a break-even period, and it becomes kind of quantitative. So we've kind of built out an Excel spreadsheet that is a little bit of a template for doing that, and it makes it pretty easy. And again, we work with our clients on filling that out, and to the extent that they can take that and fill it out themselves, works pretty well.
Do you find when working with clients that they're receptive to these concepts if they're more if they can put numbers to the data, right? It's in my experience, it's extremely hard to sell someone on soft savings, on you know uh, incremental improvements and blah 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 lead time, unless you can attach a dollar value to it. Is when you're dealing with technology implementations, what do you find really resonates with the businesses you work with that kind of says, aha, this is something we need and we probably should stop doing it the old way?
It's not that hard because I just don't think they know that these tools are out there, right? And even those are there's a price tag on some of these. If I didn't tell you anything about the tool, if like let's say in a complex manufacturing facility, a company that's 25 million, and they're either maybe not doing any kind of demand planning based off of projected sales or based off current inventory levels, or they're doing it manually in Excel, or they have somebody that's just kind of tribal knowledge. If they're a $25 million company, you said, hey, if there was a tool out there that you could spend $25,000 a year that would show you exactly what to order, when to order it, and when to produce it, they would sign up. They would sign up immediately, right? And so, to the extent that I think a lot of companies just don't know that some of these tools are out there. Um, like I mentioned, the medical staffing, right? Well, to the extent that you've got a time entry tool that a traveler is going to enter time to, you have a hospital tool that they have to enter time to, and then you have a payroll tool that they have to enter time to, and then we've got to bill the hospital for it too. So we've got to send them an invoice. So I've got to enter time in four different places. And so, you know, does that make sense? No. Maybe you do have to enter it in two places. Maybe you got to enter it at the hospital and then, internally. But then if you had, you know, an integration platform as a service tool that could spread it out to the other, two or three places, you just reduced manual effort there of somebody having to transfer that over. One medical staffing company we work with had a whole company that they were working with in India, literally retyping the information into QuickBooks so they could bill their clients, right? Like so, there's things like that where it's like, hey, this is not the way to do it. Um, and if you had a integration tool that was say $10,000 a year, does that does that make sense? Well, most of them would say, yes, absolutely. Where do I sign? Right. So I think it's just educating folks, and technology changes fast, right? Technology changes every day, every week, and a lot of people aren't tech savvy. Number one, and number two, they don't have the time or the interest in learning all the nuances and changes. The integration example is a good example where in the on-prem world, those integrations were very, very challenging to do. It might take 6 months to do those integrations, and you might spend $200,000 to do that. Now, in the cloud world, you've got REST APIs on both sides. They're public. People can connect to them. You could do that integration in a month for $25,000 and be done, right? And that's a change in the last 10 years that a lot of people just aren't aware of because we've moved from on-prem to the cloud. And so I think those are good examples where I think a little bit, if you have a CFO or a CIO or a CEO that's in their 50s or 60s, and they're trying to grow a business and focused on whatever their competitive advantage is, that's something they're just going to put in the back burner, right? Like, I'm not going to spend $200,000 to integrate these systems. And that's just changes in technology because it changes so fast.
In business, you so often hear all these great ideas, and there's these new tech pieces of software and all this stuff to use. There's a lot of strategy, but when it comes to execution, I see it so often where people oftentimes fail. They might buy the software, but they don't get it implemented. They have the great idea for the project and it never comes together. How do you go about actually making sure that the project and the transitions are successful and people are actually adopting it, and then all of those numbers on the potential ROI actually get executed? Because again, that's one of the things that I see so often is just, oh, we're going to do this big project, and 6 months down the road they spent all this money and they're still just doing everything the same way.
At the end of the day, the technology is the easy part. People's the hard part, right? And so I think to extent that you've got to be aware of that. people don't like change, right? Whether whether we say we do or we don't, it's human nature. We like to do, what we've always done. And so I think that's a piece we're going in. That business case that we've established has to be well communicated. There has to be expectations on kind of what that means for the organization. We have to have buy-in. We have to have a champion, right? A lot of times it can't be a third party that's champion a product, right? Because that's lends itself to, a little bit of suspicion. And so to the extent there's somebody within the organization, an executive level person that says, this is what we're going to do and this is why we're going to do it, and then remind people every month, because it's going to be challenging. There's going to be some roadblocks, and there's going to be some issues that pop up, and people are just going to want to go back to their natural habits, right? And so to the extent that there's somebody saying, hey, this is why we're doing this. This is, there's process improvement here. This is going to make the organization better as a whole, right? Because people just want to look at their piece of the organization and they say, well, we're not getting improvements here, because they don't know that the four other departments are getting, moving two steps ahead. And in some cases, it might mean that one group is actually taking a step back, but five other groups are taking a step forward. So as an organization, we say, we're moving, we're better off than we were. But yeah, I think just having a champion and then just reminding folks and beating it into them. And then as they go through that change management process, we're essentially building that awareness, right? And that adoption, we're getting them the knowledge. And if they accept that knowledge, then they become the experts in that application, and then they start liking it, and then they start kind of drinking the Kool-Aid. And then we just kind of, reinforce that. But it takes time, and everybody's different. Every organization's different in their culture. To the extent that an organization is more adept at change, they've got strong leadership, they're willing to take it on. Organizations that don't have strong leadership, don't adapt well to change, have a high turnover, those are projects that are really set up for failure. And so those are things that going in, we're definitely cognizant of.
Very nice. Well, Travis, I want to take a bit of a turn in the conversation and talk about you. I appreciate your knowledge. You're saying all them buzzwords that makes me think I'm still at work. But so, Travis, you've been in consulting 20 years. That's impressive. You've probably seen some interesting business models and probably have seen some pretty fascinating use cases. What what drove you into consulting? What led you into consulting? And I assume you like it because you're still here 20 years later, though.
Yeah, I kind of got into it by accident. I realized that I kind of I started in corporate accounting, and my first three jobs, I was using the same accounting package, Oracle. And so I realized that I kind of had an aptitude for it and I enjoyed it. And every time they did an upgrade or an enhancement or had an issue with the system, they kind of said, hey, Travis, go figure that out. And so I used my accounting knowledge to kind of deep dive into some of the financial information, but I did that through the system. And so I got pretty good at digging into the details within the system and figuring out efficient ways to get to the data, um, and drill back into it, create meaningful reports. Again, do testing and try different things, try to break the system. Work with the app, the system administrators to figure out how to fix the system. And so I actually was working at an accounting or as an accountant for a consulting firm, and they said, hey, you're pretty good at this. You want to try the consulting side? I said, sure, why not? Um, and just really, really enjoyed it, and to the extent that there's an opportunity to learn something new every day. My parents were both teachers, and so I think I got that learner aptitude in me, that just the desire to wake up every day and learn something new. But it can be very daunting, and very challenging at times. And so I always tell our people, you kind of have to embrace the suck. It's not a lot. It's not every day is not fun. To the extent that you're a consultant, and somebody's paying you to come to work every day. As a company, you're selling yourself. We're ultimately the product that has to be high quality every day. And so you got to bring your A game, and that can be a little bit of a grind. There is high burnout, in what we do. On top of that, for about 10 years, I was traveling about 75%. And so that was a whole, kind of different challenge and experience with little kids at home, and trying to kind of manage all of that, personally as well. But got to experience a lot of different things. I've probably, worked with maybe 500 different companies, just kind of through my dealings over the last 20 years, and probably been part of about 150 different large system implementations or go lives. And through that, I've got to work with thousands of different people, and just an infinite amount of learning that takes place in that time frame. And so I'm sure I've forgotten more than I ever probably should, but to the extent that it's been you know a great experience, and I wake up every day trying to learn more about that, again, that technology and that in business process, and ultimately how to make businesses better.
You touched on burnout. That's something that I don't know if my YouTube algorithm or something is telling me something about myself. I don't know, but it's super common, and I know the consulting world. I've know many people within it. Clearly, Wyatt. It's super stressful. It's super demanding. The hours are crazy. You were just talking about all the travel and those pieces. How do you find, like, what tactics, what advice, what pieces, systems are you using to avoid that burnout from going too hard and just completely crashing? And what do you do? What have you done that has led you to be more consistent over 20 years rather than just burning hard and then burning out?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to understand, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, right? And so it's a little bit of just keep putting one foot in front of the other. But you do combine that with flexibility, right? The nature of the work is very flexible, and there's a lot of autonomy in what I can learn, because, like I said, there is an infinite amount of learning that can take place within consulting. And so I enjoy the autonomy to go to work and learn something that I personally want to learn. So it's not every day, obviously, but ultimately there's going to be, a half day on a Friday afternoon where I can pick a topic and I can deep dive on it. Um, you know, it might be a field service application that makes a pool and spa company in Vail, Colorado work more efficiently. And that's not my background. I was formerly an accountant. I've done a lot of things outside of that area, but that's an area where I'm just gonna, deep dive. It might be, you know, AP automation, right? So, to the extent that there's a handful of tools out there that, are going to do OCR capture and approval, and I've got some advanced workflow. They integrate with NetSuite, and then, they're integrating with the bank. Some of these things are, virtual credit cards on crack type situation, and they're going to go ahead and pay you, a 2% rebate on all your spend. It's like, oh wow, like we were paying $50,000 a year for Concur, and now there's a tool out there that's going to pay us $50,000 because we've got a virtual credit card with them. Like, okay, well that's pretty darn interesting. On the flip side of that, point of sale systems, we've been getting into that, and it might be an opportunity to learn. Okay, What's the difference between square stripe and clover, and why do people pick one or the other? And then when a client asks me that, I've got that answer in my back pocket, right? That's what excites me, is just the opportunity to provide value to my clients every day. Again, so it's sometimes it's easier just say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, and I can introduce you to somebody. Um, but that, as cliche as it is, the opportunity to be that trusted advisor, right? To the extent that they're going to ask me a question, and maybe hopefully I know the answer, or I can find the answer, or I can find a person that knows the answer, is really what just excites me.
Well said. You and Tanner have a lot in common in that learner archetype. I saw Tanner perk up when you mentioned that. He also is the same way, and it's a skill I envy. But so you've seen technology change over the years. What excites you right now with technology for businesses? What is on the horizon, or what has recently arrived that just lights your fire, and something you wish to learn more about right now?
Well, I know it's the buzzword, but AI, right, and is kind of the thing, and so just continuing to learn about it. I'm certainly not an expert, but it shows up in everything that we do, and so I'm trying to understand, how it's going to impact us, and if you think back 5 or 10 years ago, it was blockchain, 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 right, and it never really came to fruition, and maybe it still will, but it hasn't, impact our personal lives, and really the lives of 95% of businesses. And so AI, I think, is very different, and I think we're just at the very beginning of it. To the extent it's definitely already showing up within applications. People are definitely using it. We're starting to use it just for meeting notes, but to the extent that it goes beyond that, and where it can go, and the large data models, and the learning models that kind of can go off of that are pretty amazing, and scary all at the same time. And so, you know, you're starting to see the regulatory bodies get involved and figure out, what needs to happen here, different ethics committees. And so, um, I think that's the big thing right now, is kind of what does that mean? And we do a lot around reporting and analytics as well. And so, the data behind that, and how we can apply some of the data and intelligence, where, obviously, a lot of this is, command based prompts is kind of really what we're talking about here, and the logic behind it. So command-based prompts as it relates to data analytics, where you can essentially ask, you know, hey, show me sales for the last 10 years. Like, that should be a very easy thing to do within data analytics, because the data is already there. Now, bring up a picture of a horse with wings, that's, eating a popsicle. Like, those are other things that I don't really care about, because it's not really applicable to what I'm doing. But the data analytics piece in the short term, certain applications that we're working with are working on, um, text enrichment, right? So, you write a sentence, it can make it 3 paragraphs. You say, hey, that's too much, it can make it 1 paragraph. We're seeing a lot of that in a lot of the applications we're working with. Chat GPT, 3 or 4, whichever one's, out there, to extent that, leveraging that, for, um, meeting notes and things like that. Again, writing code, writing base code. I think our programmers are probably already using that at least 50% of the time. Again, it's a little bit of trust and verify type situation, but to the extent that it can make your life a little bit easier and give you a framework to go off of, um, it's kind of exciting to see, and there are some efficiencies in it already.
Follow-up question to that, to the are some of the larger companies that you may work with, are you noticing more interest in AI coming from them. It's been one of those things I've been trying to get a feeler on. Some companies very interested in it. Some companies wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Are you seeing more interest coming in with AI applications?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that they understand that it's not a if, it's a when thing, right? So they know they have to do it to be competitive. And so I think the stigma around it is maybe going away a little bit. It's like cloud technology, right? If you went back 20 years ago, you know, cloud technology was a joke. Like people literally laughed at you. Um, and now if you're an on-prem app, that you're the joke, right? And so um, I think AI is a little bit of the buzzword or the joke right now for a lot of folks, but I think there's an acknowledgement that it's here, it's not going anywhere. They're seeing it already in applications. To the extent it got embedded overnight into these cloud applications. Again, going back to the integration points, you can take a Cohere, you know, robust API tool or a chat GPT, and then the APIs are just embedded in your application, so it's making a call out. And again, it's a command prompt, but to the extent that it's all embedded and it's happening real time to the end user is all they care about. So again, that text enhance, a lot of people that are customer facing, right, will draft an email, hit the AI button, and it'll tell them, what is the sentiment of this email? Was it overly direct? Is it too long? Is it too short? Like those things aren't a bad thing, right? To the extent that AI can scan your emails and tell you if you're using biased language and you're referring to people as hey guys, like or those type of things. If you're, to the extent that you're on a meeting and you're looking at your phone, it can tell you those type of things. If you're not paying attention, like level of engagement and your sentiment and those type of things. That's 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 really powerful stuff and valuable feedback, whether it's personal coaching or to extent that people want to use AI to scan for keywords in the meeting, in every meeting that happened in their company over the last week, right? So um, hey, in our organization, we're hearing a lot about this competitor called Pets R Us. All right, well, let's scan every meeting that happened the last week and see where it happened, and then find the verbiage and track down the people that were talking about it and get smarter on it. So like there's things like that are already happening because the information's there, and it's going to help these companies work more efficiently.
With AI right now, and especially in the climate of what's happening in the market and with all of the layoffs, there's a lot of concern about technology replacing employees. And you touched on it earlier where you were saying, we want to find spots for them. And I've had this conversation with Wyatt on the podcast too, where a lot of the times it's not just about replacing people, but reutilizing people. With all of these new tools, all the new abilities that AI stuff can bring that you talked about, where do you see the resources of employee bases being shifted within a business, and what is vulnerable perhaps too?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately they get shifted up, right? To the extent that a lot of the AI and technology is going to take the maybe entry level jobs is typically the way this would happen, and um, it might be on a shop floor. It might be you know somebody at McDonald's taking orders at the kiosk. We're already seeing that a lot, right? It might be somebody at fast food filling drinks. It might be somebody in a warehouse stacking boxes. Um, those jobs are the ones that are most impacted, but it's not a bad thing, right? So that means we need more managers and kind of mid-level career opportunities and jobs. And to the extent we're able to capitalize on that, versus maybe other countries or other industries. I think to the extent we have to be aware of where that is, right? So that's mid-level management jobs in manufacturing. That's mid-level jobs in food service. It's a higher level skill set that entails, more advanced thinking, less physical labor. You're able to communicate more effectively. You're able to, manage people and understand how to lead people and actually dictate to the technology what needs to happen so that you can accomplish your needed goals. So yeah, I mean, I don't know that it replaces jobs. I think it moves jobs around, but I think we're eliminating, you know, entry level positions that hopefully folks aren't too disappointed in, and to the extent that those people can be repurposed. Now, again, maybe maybe it eliminates a broad industry. Maybe not the whole industry, but entry level positions, within manufacturing. Maybe those get reduced by 10%. But again, to the extent that we take, you know, 5% of those people, we make them managers. The other 5%, maybe they go, work in technology or science or, some other, medical field or, something to that effect. Maybe they make a career change. And so it makes us stronger, I think, definitely as a whole.
Well, I can imagine too, especially manufacturing all those, it's not going to happen super quickly. I mean, there's certain adoption, but like you're saying, it takes a while to get people to recognize those and adopt the changes. You're seeing a lot right now within startup communities or software based stuff, all the tech industry, because I imagine there's so much on the bleeding edge of using everything. But in the reality of how the real world operates and how most businesses operate, it's probably significantly slower and not something to worry about in the immediate future, I would imagine.
All right, Travis, I've got a bit of a hot seat question for you. We're gonna test those consultant think on your feet skills. All right. So you've worked with major companies for 20 years, anywhere from $1 million to billions of dollars worth of company, right? Um, you've probably worked with some amazing leaders and maybe some not so much, but you've probably seen some really impressive leadership in some of these companies before. What do you believe are some of those valuable skill sets from those amazing leaders you may have experienced over the years that founders and business owners should try and emulate and gain success from that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think, a lot of the great leaders I've worked with, they're pretty fearless, right? They're to the point, pretty fearless. They're able to kind of get after it, but they're also harmonizers, right? At the end of the day, they're not going to be jerks. They're not going to be overly direct or mean to their employees. Um, they're gonna bring people together, lead the charge, and so I think that's important because as a small business owner, or medium-sized business owner, to the extent that you're focused on results, right? But there is an element of bringing people together, setting a goal, setting a target, and really pushing them hard, but understanding that they're real people, to the extent that you're able to, relate with people and understand, what truly makes them tick and why they come to work and why they do what they do. Ultimately, that's going to, you know, provide much better results. And they're going to work much harder because ultimately there's going to be a time where they're going to have to, run through a brick wall, right? They're going to be a point where they've got family and other commitments and they're tired and burned out. um, and so I think that relationship piece cannot be underestimated, and I think most leaders realize that. The ones that don't, it's probably you know probably pretty set in their ways and maybe pretty challenging to overcome that. But yeah, I mean, I think rallying the team around a common goal and bringing them together and being very, setting an established goal that's very clear, for the team, and then they can drive towards results. Uh, goes a long ways for sure.
Well, Travis, thanks for joining us on here on the podcast. Where can people find you online?
Definitely LinkedIn. Um, I think to the extent that Meridian Business, look us up. Um, doing lots of good work with lots of small, medium-sized companies, mostly in the Midwest, but also kind of East West Coast. Love to talk more um, with any of your listeners about different business challenges. You know, different business challenges that they have. It's likely that I've encountered it before. It may not be exactly the way it's presented, but some variation of it. And always happy to talk with folks about kind of what I'm seeing in the market. And so hit me up on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, again,
Definitely like
thank
to
you so
connect.
much for joining us. And thank you to everyone who's made it to the end of the episode. We really appreciate you. Make sure that you drop a comment, share it to a friend. And if you're not already subscribed to us on YouTube, please do so. We're growing those numbers steadily each week, which is awesome. But until then, we will see you all next week. Bye bye.